What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Magic the Conversation. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing the Urza's Legacy set. It is the second set as part of the 3 expansion block Urza Saga, and it has its fair share of powerful and iconic cards, as well as a continuation of the story itself. It's the 16th set that has come out for the game and was released February 1999. The expansion set symbol is a hammer, and it's used to signify, because Urza is an artificer, and a lot of mechanics, engineers, artificers, they use hammers to build their constructs. As Urza Saga had gears, this one has a hammer. And without further ado, I will explain what happens in the stories as well as we progress. And there is a special thing about the set. In Urza's Legacy, it's the first time that Wizards of the Coast, the company that printed the game, did foil cards. And what foil cards are, they're another word for holographics. For those who are familiar with trading card games, you have a rare chance of getting a card that's shiny, so to speak, depending on how you hold it to the light. Those are known as foil or holographic, whatever you want to call them. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into the set. First card is About Face, showing this Gitu warrior throw his shield away, and he is going full assault with his sword. For 1 red, you switch target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. Effects that alter the creature's power alter its toughness instead, and vice versa. The overconfident are the most vulnerable. It's an interesting card for red to have. It's good with decks that have creatures with higher toughness. You don't really see this ability with red anymore. I think green and white now kind of have adopted the ability where toughness matters. So it's interesting to see in red. Angelic Curator. Is she just a spirit or an angel spirit? Yep, angel spirit. 1/1 flying, protects from artifacts. Do not treat your people as you treat your artifacts. Let them go and they will live. Seal them here and they will die. Urza to Radiant. Artifacts are getting more and more powerful as each set comes out. So this was a good way to... a lot of creatures didn't really have protection from artifacts. But the Angelic Curator is one of the first. Angel's Trumpet. 3 mana artifact. It gives your creatures, all your creatures, vigilance, which means attacking doesn't cause them to tap. At the end of each player's turn, tap all untapped creatures that they control that did not attack this turn. Angel's Trumpet deals 1 damage to that player for each creature tapped in this way. So, if you have ways that your opponent's creatures can attack, either with pacifism, or you have moat, or some other ways to stop their creatures from attacking, and their creatures are untapped at the end of the turn, their creatures are going to become tapped, and they take 1 damage for each one tapped in this way. I have a deck built around Angel's Trumpet. A lot of my friends said it's one of the most frustrating decks to play against. So I barely run any creatures. I just run like all these copies of target or enchanted creature cannot attack, and then my opponents sit there and just keep taking damage every turn with the trumpet. Anthroplasm, 4 mana. It's a 0/0, but it comes into play with 2+1/+1 counters. You can pay X and tap it to remove all counters from Anthroplasm, and then you put X +1/+1 counters on it. So it starts off as a 2/2, and then the more mana you have, the more mana you can change the amount of counters that go on it. Fortunately, every time you use the ability, he doesn't get bigger. He only gets bigger based on the mana that you pay each time. I never metamorphosis I didn't like. That's a funny play on words. Archivist for 4 mana. He's a 1/1 wizard, and you just tap him to draw a card. Some do, some teach, the rest look it up. He's got a lot of books, a lot of bookmarks, and one cool thing is each bookmark he has in this tome that he's reading is one color represented in Magic. There's the white, the blue, black, green, and red. Aura Flux. Each other enchantment gains during your upkeep, pay 2 colorless mana or sacrifice this enchantment. To some, the Tolarian sunrise was a blinding flash. To others, a lingering glow. Avalanche Riders. 4 mana 2/2. Echo. Means you have to pay its casting cost on the next turn again. Otherwise, you have to sacrifice them. They have haste, and when they enter the battlefield, they destroy target land. Pretty good. Creatures that do more than one thing. He destroys a land for only 4 mana, which is good. Excuse me. And he has haste, so he can attack as soon as he comes out. If you, for any reason, don't want to pay the Echo, you still got to destroy a land and got to swing in for at least 2 damage if the opponent didn't have any blockers for it. Beast of Burden. It looks like Karn. Yeah, I think this is a picture of Karn, so to speak, before he gets, like, intelligence. He's holding up a piece of the Sky Shaper, which will eventually become the Weatherlight Sky Ship. He has power toughness equal to the number of creatures in play, so he does count himself. So if he's out by himself, he'll always be a 1/1 at least. If it is meant to be nothing but a machine, Karn finally asked Johora, why did Urza build it to be like me? Blessed Reversal. Here's Karn. I think that's Johora. Gain 3 life for each creature attacking you. Even an enemy is a valuable resource. This is only a situational card. If your opponent's not attacking you, this card does nothing. I don't like it. Bloated Toad. 3 mana 2/2. Toad with protection from blue. And he has cycling, so if your opponent's not playing blue, you can just pay 2 mana, discard him, and draw a new card. Bone Shredder. 3 mana 1/1 with flying and echo. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. The artwork is awesome. It's like a flying cornucopia with full of scorpion claws. And like its name implies, it can rip apart bones. The flavor text, though, says non-black and non-artifact, but I would think this thing would love to consume skeletons. That's my only gripe about it. Bouncing Beebles, 3 mana 2/2. Bouncing Beebles is unblockable if the defending player controls an artifact. Beebles are frequently hurled against stone surfaces at high speed, but always zing back into the air with a giggle. They're kind of like these gerbils, magic gerbils, and they're used in like experiments at the academy. Brink of Madness. During your upkeep, if you have no cards in hand, sacrifice Brink of Madness and target opponent discards his or her hand. The fools thought me dead, but I built an empire inside my tomb. Carrick the Sleeper Agent. So, meanwhile, during the stay at the academy, when Urza's training all of these wizards and young teens and ones to help him aid against Phyrexia, a ship crashes onto Teleria, and a survivor of it is Carrick. He's like a young man, and Johora ends up falling in love with him. But it turns out Carrick is actually a sleeper agent for Phyrexia. And he ends up able to steal some of Urza's blueprints. He's spying. He's letting the Phyrexians know what the Academy's progress is like. And then eventually he helps the Phyrexians invade Teleria, killing Johora, killing almost everybody. Karn actually goes into the future to see all this, and then he tries to warn Urza about it happening, and they send him back in time to fix what had happened now that they know what they know. And then Karn does go back in time successfully to stop Carrick and the Phyrexians from invading. In doing so, the time machine ends up overloading, and that's what causes all the Talarian time rifts. And Carrick actually gets caught in that time rift, but he isn't killed, just as he says, the fools thought me dead, but I built an empire inside my tomb. What had happened, the time rift that Carrick got stuck in, time was sped up more than in the present timeline, so he got to amass a bigger army in a short amount of time, and then he eventually comes back to the Talarian Academy and attacks it. Urza ends up defeating Carrick, though, by planeswalking pretty much, which is like teleporting right in the same spot that Carrick was standing. So Urza pretty much teleports into his body and rips him apart. Burst of energy for 1 white, untapped target permanent. I stand ready to die for our world. Who will stand with me? Radiant the Archangel. Sezzitation. I think that's how you say it. Trainer creature cannot attack. When Sezzitation is put into a graveyard from play, return cessation to owner's hand. I said Sezzitation, but it's just cessation. The face of light will shine upon them, and they will know war no more. Cloud of Fairies. I forgot about this card, but oh, is it a good card. It's a 1/1 fairy with flying. When they enter the battlefield, you get to untap 2 lands. So they're basically free to cast as long as you have 2 lands. And they also cycle, so if you don't need the fairies, you can discard them to draw a card. Crawl Space. For 3 mana, no more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat. Really good in group games. The goblins did not understand their attraction to the mana rig. They simply knew it was where they belonged. Crop Rotation. When you cast Crop Rotation, sacrifice a land, search your library for a land card, and put it onto the battlefield. Shuffle your library afterward. Now you can search for any land. It doesn't have to be a basic land. Maybe Lotuses this year. It's a little nod to the Black Lotus. Damping Engine. For 4 mana, a player who controls more permanents than any other cannot play lands, artifacts, creatures, or enchantment spells. That player may sacrifice a permanent to ignore this effect until the end of the turn. These look like Phyrexian dodo birds. I've never seen this card used before. Darkwatch Elves, 2/2 elves with protection from black. They also have cycling, like the Bloated Toad. Did it go to the next page? No. What are we doing? Next page, please. Oh no. What's going on? Sorry, guys. Finally. Defender of Chaos. 2/1 protection from white. You can play Defender of Chaos anytime you can play an instant. So it has flash. Some knights will not follow orders, only disorder. I forgot about this card too. Red knights weren't really a thing until much later with Throne of Eldraine. Offered a lot of red knights for that set. But I think this is a good card overall, especially against white. It has flash, so it'll always catch your opponent off guard. Just like this one, it's polar opposite, Defender of Law. It has protection from red and also flash, and the same power, toughness, and casting cost. It is not my place to question Radiant's rule. I exist only to enforce it. Defense grid. 2-minute artifact. During each player's turn, spells played by another player cost an additional 3. So pretty much instants cost an extra 3. We've managed to keep the goblins in their assigned areas, but there's little we can do about the smell. Whip Tongue, the Biashino technician. This definitely stops counterspell decks. Slows them down dramatically. Defense of the Heart. During your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, and put them onto the battlefield. Really, really, really good green card because you get to search your deck for any 2 creatures, regardless of the casting cost, and put them out on the battlefield if your opponent has 3 or more creatures out. Just having the enchantment out would probably stop your opponent from playing more than 3 creatures, so it could be used defensively in that manner as well. The artwork, it shows Multani. He is a Marrow Sorcerer of the Yavimaya Forest, and he's making an alliance with Urza as the Phyrexians have their influence in Dominaria, and they are poisoning the forest as well. That's why Multani has agreed for Urza and them to team up to face the Phyrexian threat. However, before this happens, Urza is put into like a at least a year of slumber for intruding on his land before they make this alliance. Next card is Delusions of Mediocrity. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 10 life. When it loses the battlefield, you lose 10 life. Where nothing but second best will do. This card is a tribute to the Ice Age card, Delusions of... Oh, I forgot what it's called. I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Oh, Delusions of Grandeur, which is 20 life instead of 10 life. So this is like the poor man's Delusions of Grandeur. Deranged Hermit. 5 mana 1/1 elf with Echo. When it comes into play, put 4 squirrel tokens onto the battlefield. Treat these tokens as 1/1 green creatures, and he gives all squirrels +1/+1. Definitely a staple card for those who want to have squirrel decks. Devout Harpist. Tap or destroy target creature enchantment. The notes themselves are irrelevant. The music's effect, however, is worth 10 armies. Engineered Plague. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. All creatures of the chosen type get -1/-1 until end of turn. The admixture of bitter wort in the viral brew has produced most favorable results, the Phyrexian Progress notes. It shows that 2 goblins and a Viashino have been captured. I guess the plague is only affecting the goblins. You can see how sickly they look. While the Viashino is, even though he's tied up with them, he isn't showing any signs of sickness whatsoever. These are the kind of experiments the Phyrexians do. Really good against tribal decks. This card would weaken soldiers, humans, elves, goblins. Most creature types are going to be small because they use like an army, so to speak, to overwhelm the opponent. And Engineered Plague's a good one to have to fight them. Erase. Remove target enchantment from the game for just 1 white mana. Perception is more pleasing than truth. Ain't that the truth? Eviscerator. 5 mana, protection from white. It's a 5/5. When it comes into play, lose 5 life. It roamed the time bubble like a captured animal. Carrick knew he must soon find a way to unleash it on Teleria or destroy it. It was one of Carrick's monstrosities that he did release onto the Academy. Expendable troops. 2 mana, 2/1. You can tap them and sacrifice them to do 2 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. No doubts in their mind, no fear in their hearts. Rest in peace, guys. Y'all expendable. Fairy Conclave, the first of a land cycle in the set that has lands that turn into creatures for the turn. This tradition would be revisited many times in Magic's future. Fairy Conclave is the blue one that becomes a 2/1 creature with flying. Beautiful looking card. Fleeting Image, an illusion for 3 mana, 2/1. At any time you can pay a blue and a colors to return it to your hand. Horace swore off drinking, but after meeting the creature a second time, he decided he'd better start again. Working at the academy, it's almost like Harry Potter's wizardry school, just more science is involved. And of course, with all the time magic and summoning happening, these illusions would be running rampant. Fog of Gnats. 2 mana, 1/1 flying, regeneration for 1 black. You can swat 1,000 gnats, but 1,000 more will assail you. Currently my favorite card from the set. I used Fog of Gnats. They were in my first black decks, and I've used them defensively. Because they have flying, they can block creatures with flying, or they can attack over the opponent if they don't have flying. And the fact that they have regenerate, they just helped keep me alive back in the day when I didn't really have many options for cards. Forbidding Watchtower is the white animated land that becomes a 1/5. It's probably the weakest of the 5 and mainly used for blocking situations. Frantic Search. I just heard thunder. Draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards on top of 3 lands. Motivation was high in the academy once students realized flunking their exams could kill them. And that just goes with with their time experiments. If they did something wrong, it could end their life and their classmates as well. This is a really powerful card, especially for graveyard reanimation or if you need to search for card combos. And you get to untap 3 lands after casting it, meaning you can cast another spell afterwards. This card is actually banned in both Pauper and Legacy because of how powerful it is. Gang of Elk, 6 mana, 5/4. Are they beasts? Elk beasts. Whenever creature blocks it, Gang of Elk get +2/+2 until end of turn. The elk is Gaia's favorite, who wears the forest on its brow. This poor badger better get out the way. Get to encampment. I always say there's a mad face coming out of this smokestack here, but it could be just my imagination. It's the red animated land that becomes a 2/1 with first strike until end of turn. Get to Fire Eater, 3 mana, 2/2. You can tap it, sacrifice it. She deals damage equal to her power to target creature or player. They are called Miyotu, which means one use. Now, Johora is from the Gitu clan. They're a clan of nomads who live up in the mountains of Shiv, and they practice fire magic. Gitu Slinger, 3 mana, 2/2 with Echo. When they enter the battlefield, you get to do 2 damage to any target. If you survive a Slinger attack, the Slinger wished you to live. The artwork is beautiful. You can just see in your head that this nomad swinging a ball of flaming rock like a bola. I assume it would be a good fire show, as long as you're not the target. Excuse me. Why is this taking so long to get to the next page? I wonder. Get to Warcry. It's an enchantment for 1 red. Target creature gets power +1 to end of turn. So this gives like fire breathing that you can just do at will on any of your creatures. The Warcry is not simply a shout, but a sacrament. You can do best combo I've done this with was the get to Fire Eater. Just put a bunch of make her power as long as you can afford, big as you can afford, and then sacrifice her to deal damage equal to her power to whatever you need to do. Giant Cockroach, 4 mana, 4/2. Doesn't have any other abilities, but the artwork is cool. If the sun ever hit the swamp, where would these scurry to? Goblin Medics, 3 mana, 1/1. When Goblin Medics becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. First, do some harm. Oath of Goblins. They got little sirens on their heads, and they're taking a Viashino. I don't know what happened to the Viashino, if he fell and broke his arm, but it looks like they're not really taking good care of him because they're goblins, and goblins' safety first is not in their status quo. When they attack, they get to deal 1 damage to anything, but also if there are other ways to tap the goblins, whether you're saddling creatures or crewing vehicles, or if you have other cards that say tap a creature, there could be a couple combos that the Goblin Medics can do. Goblin Welder. This is a powerful card because you can tap him to exchange target artifact a player controls for target artifact in that player's graveyard. I wrecked your metal guy, boss, but look, I made you an ashtray. So he's taking apart one thing and adding them to another. So you could put just, you can sacrifice a little rinky-dink artifact that you have in play, and if you have like a big Colossus in your graveyard, you can just switch them, and then you have the Colossus on the battlefield. Granite Grip. Enchanted creature gets power +1 for each mountain you control. There's beauty in the desert, but it's best to view it afar. This naked guy's like having all this molten rock attached to his body. I had this in my fire breathing deck. I put it on the Get 2 Fire Eater, as I mentioned. Tried to make her power as big as possible, and then sacrificing her for the game-winning blow. Grim Monolith, a very powerful mana ramping artifact. It costs 2 mana to cast. It does not untap during your untap step. It taps for 3 colorless, but you have to pay 4 colorless to untap it. Part prison, part home. And it's worth over $200. I can't remember if I sold mine or not, but I did have one at one point. Harmonic Convergence, 3 mana, return all enchantments to the top of their owner's libraries. When the eternal stars align, can mere mortals resist? I've never seen this card used, but this would totally cripple enchantment-based decks because it would just put all the enchantments that are on the battlefield back on top of their libraries, meaning they can only draw 1 a turn to use. Hidden Gibbons, the hidden theme returns from the saga. When one of your opponents successfully casts an instant, if Hidden Gibbons is an enchantment, they become a 4/4 ape. When these apes want something, it's a matter of give and take. Another play on words. Instead of give and take, it's give and take. Hope and Glory. Untap 2 target creatures. Each of them get +1/+1 until end of turn. Sarah ruled by faith. I cannot afford that luxury. Another quote from Radiant. Impending disaster. This goblin's eating a sandwich or a taco, and this explosion made him spit his food out. I've never seen this card. During your upkeep, if there are 7 or more lands in play, sacrifice Impending Disaster and destroy all lands. The goblins are in charge of maintenance. Why not just set it on fire now and call it a day? Whip-tongue the Viashino technician. The goblins are always at war with the Viashino for full control over the Thrawn Foundry. Intervene. Counter target spell that targets a creature. At first I simply observed, but I found that without investment in others, life serves no purpose. A quote from Karn. Iron Maiden. During each of your opponent's upkeeps, Iron Maiden deals 1 damage to that player for each card in their hand, more than 4. So if they have 5, they take 1, 6, 2, 7, 3. The Maiden is a jealous lover. Iron Will for 1 white. Target creature gets +4 toughness until end of turn. And it has cycling. Johor's Toolbox. For 2 mana, pay 2, regenerate target artifact creature. It entertained Johor to craft a kit that could bring her tools. It's a cute little bug, artifact bug, and it has tools in the box. I can just imagine it walking around. Little screwdriver hands. And, do I like it better than Fog of Gnats? Yes, I will have to say Johor's Toolbox is currently my favorite. Karmic Guide. 5 mana, 2/2 Angel Spirit. It has protection from black, flying, and echo. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature in your graveyard and put it directly into play. Graveyard Revival for white. King Crab, 6 mana, 4/5. Pay 2 and tap it to put target green creature on top of its owner's library. It can lock a mono green deck from playing creatures. Or they keep drawing the same creature every turn. I'm allergic to shellfish. Not only did it kill my entire village, but it also gave me this nasty rash. Olivia the Fisher. Excuse me. I love the artwork on it. Knighthood. All creatures you control have first strike. He has returned. He has brought the dark ones. He who poisoned our paradise. How shall we greet him? With swift and certain death. Radiant the Archangel. She ends up leading a consistency of knights and soldiers against Urza. Last Ditch Effort. Sacrifice X creatures. Last Ditch Effort deals X damage to target creature or player. If you're going to lose, at least make sure they don't win as much. Jula the Goblin Raider. This is probably the best to use in a token deck or a goblin deck. If you attack with a lot of creatures, but your opponent managed to somehow survive, but they're just barely hanging on, Last Ditch Effort means you can sacrifice as many creatures as you want if you need to get the job done that way. Lava Axe, 5 mana, 5 damage to target player. Pretty simple. It's poor man's direct damage. Catch is the flavored text. A lot of people used Lava Axe when it first came out. Just using 4 of them is 20 damage, and without life gain, that's game. Levitation, all creatures you control gain flying. Baron's pride in his apprentice was diminished somewhat when he had to get the others back down. Lone Wolf, 3 mana 2/2. You may have it deal combat damage to defending player instead of the creatures blocking it. A wolf without a pack is either a survivor or a brute. It's an interesting ability because I think it's one of the first that of its kind. Even if the opponent blocks it, Lone Wolf can still hit the opponent as though it wasn't blocked. Lone Wolf is still going to take combat damage from the creature that blocked it, but if you give Lone Wolf regeneration or indestructible, then it's practically unblockable. The only time you're not going to want to deal damage to the opponent is if you absolutely have to kill the creature that is blocking it. And this ability will be repeated in a lot of other green creatures in Magic's future. Lurking Scourge starts off as an enchantment. Whenever a creature is put into one of your opponent's graveyards, if Lurking Scourge is an enchantment, Lurking Scourge becomes a 3/2 imp with flying. They never miss a funeral. It shows his jackal dying, and the Scourge is going in for the kill. Beautiful artwork. I love these Scourges. Martyr's Cause. The soldier took an arrow to the stomach, to the chest, to the neck, to save this angel. Dying is a soldier's talent. It's an enchantment. You can sacrifice a creature, prevent all damage to a creature or player from one source. Memory Jar. Now this card was banned before it was even released because Urza's Saga had so many powerful cards that comboed too well, and a lot of cards were banned after Urza's Saga came out, even in Standard. And Memory Jar was banned before it even was released to the public. So no one ever really got to use this card tournament-wise, but it's very powerful. It costs 5. You tap it and sacrifice it. Each player sets aside his or her entire hand face down and draws 7 cards. At the end of the turn, each player discards that hand that they drew and gets the cards they set aside back. Really powerful in decks that require you to look for a certain combo, or you can abuse it with decks that force your opponent to draw cards, or every time the opponent draws a card, they take damage, or every time they discard a card, they take 2 damage via Magrim. A lot of combo usage. But it was considered too powerful and was banned, and is still banned today in Legacy and restricted in Vintage. Might of Oaks. 4 mana. Target creature gets +7/+7 until end of turn. Suddenly, she couldn't see the acorns for the trees. We can see that this squirrel grew to massive proportions. Miscalculation. Karn and 2 students. I guess this beaker exploded, and you can see that the hair on these 2 students is singed. Counter target spell unless its caster pays an additional 2 mana, and it has cycling. Molten Hydra. 2 mana, 1/1. You can pay 3 to put a +1/+1 counter on it. You can tap it, remove all counters on it to deal 1 damage to any target for each +1/+1 counter removed in this way. Keep off the glass. The Hydra warning sign. This was one of my brother's first rares that he ended up getting. I really like the card a lot. I got to use it when I finally acquired some copies of it. Do I like it better than Johor's Toolbox? Yes. So Molten Hydra gets my favorite card from the set so far. Mother of Runes. Man, this card really wrecked my day when I started out playing. It's a 1/1 cleric. You can tap her. Target creature you control gets protection from any color of your choice until end of turn. My family protects all families. So if you wanted to target a certain creature with a spell and Mother of Runes was out and you could use her, she could just give that creature protection from that chosen color. You would have to target the Mother of Runes first, but even then, she can give herself protection too. So it was hard to, once the Mother of Runes was no longer had Summoner Sickness and was able to tap, it was hard to get her off the battlefield back in the day when you had limited options. Multani, the Marrow Sorcerer. 6 mana. His power toughness is equal to the number of cards in all players' hands. He cannot be the target of spells or abilities. So the more people that are playing, the more dangerous Multani becomes. To make peace with the forest, make peace with me, Multani says to Urza. Multani's Acolyte. It's an old-looking elf. 2/1 with Echo. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Multani's Presence enchantment. Whenever a spell you play is countered, draw a card. When a tree falls in the forest, Multani hears it. It's a good sideboard card against blue with counter spell strategies. No Mercy. 4 mana. Whenever a creature successfully deals damage to you, destroy it. We had years to prepare while they had mere minutes. Carrick, the Sleeper Agent. This is the time rift that Carrick's Phyrexians have evolved, and they opened the rift and are attacking the Tolarian Academy now. I really like this card. It was a good defensive black card to have. Opal Avenger. If you have 10 or less life, if Opal Avenger is an enchantment, it becomes a 3/5 guardian. As the sun grew cold in the realm, the statue grew warm. Opal Champion. I think I like this one better than the Avenger. When your opponent casts a creature spell, if Opal Champion is an enchantment, it becomes a 3/3 knight with first strike. 3 mana for a 3/3 knight with first strike is damn good because most of the time the opponent's going to cast a creature. Opportunity. For 6 mana, target player draws 4 cards. He cocooned himself alone in his workshop for months. When he finally emerged, all broad grins and excited chatter, I knew he had found his answer. This is one Urza uh, discovers that he can assemble a living skyship, which ends up being the Weatherlight, as pictured here. Ostracize. Look at target opponent's hand and choose a creature card in their hand. That player must discard the card. Carrick was to find that some borders can never be crossed. Palinchron, 7 mana, 4/5 flying. When it comes into play, untap up to 7 lands, and you can pay 4 mana to return it to its owner's hand. One of my friends had an infinite combo with this card. One of the old cards, Mana Flare, for 3 mana meant lands tap for double. So he would cast Palinchron, and then he would pay 4 to return it to his hand. When Palinchron came out, you untap up to 7 lands. And because mana tap for double, you only had to tap 4 lands to cast the Palinchron. But since Palinchron untaps 7 lands, you get more lands to untap versus the cost of what he pays for. So all he would do is he would keep paying for returning the Palinchron to his hand, recasting the Palinchron over and over again, and he would combo with either Storm or whenever Surprise Assault, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, do 1 damage to your opponent. Parch. It's an instant that does 2 damage to any target. If that target is a blue creature, it deals 4 damage instead. Your porous flesh betrays you. Fire Eye, the Vishino Bay. Oh man, this poor guy is roasting in the sun. Peace and Quiet. Destroy 2 target enchantments. In time, our realm will shine again, but it will gleam only when we scour away the taint of doubt. Phyrexian Broodlings. 3 mana for a 2/2. You can pay 1, sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on them. With limited resources and near unlimited time, Carrick used parts from one beast to build another. Because Carrick was cut off from the rest of his Phyrexians, that's what he had to do. He had to tear some apart and to improve the ones that he had. I really like this one. This one looks really cool. I do like him better than Molten Hydra, so I'm going to choose them as my favorite. Phyrexian Debaser, 4 mana, 2/2 flying, Phyrexian. You can tap it and sacrifice it to give target creature -2/-2 until end of turn. The second stage of illness, high fever and severe infectiousness. Phyrexian progress notes. Here you have the flying Phyrexians spewing their Phyrexian disease all over the place. Phyrexian Defiler, 4 mana, 3/3. You can tap and sacrifice it to give target creature -3/-3 until end of turn. The third stage of illness, muscle aches and persistent cough. That's what I had earlier this week. Phyrexian Denouncer, this is the weakest one. 2 mana, 1/1. Tap it, sacrifice it, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. The first stage of the illness, rash and nausea. And here's the end result of it. 5 mana, 4/4, Phyrexian Plague Lord. Sacrifice it to give target creature -4/-4 until end of turn. You could also sacrifice any creature to give target creature -1/-1 until end of turn. The final stage of the illness, delirium, convulsions, and death. And these were kind of like the high elders of the Phyrexian force. Phyrexian Reclamation for 1 black. You can pay 2 and 2 life to return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. Death is no excuse to stop working. That's corporate management's motto. Plague Beetle, 1/1 insect for 1 black. It has Swamp Walk. It is a harbinger of disease, not the carrier. And it killed something. I don't know if this was a goblin, but it died because there's flesh, blood in the muck. Planar Collapse. During your upkeep, if there are 4 or more creatures in play, sacrifice Planar Collapse and destroy all creatures. Those creatures cannot be regenerated. With heavy heart, Urza doused one world's light to rekindle another's. So here, the Sarah's realm had to collapse. They needed it to power, I believe, the Thrawn engine that is used for the weather light. Right. My memory could be wrong. Let me look that up real quick. Excuse me. Okay, Sarah's realm was attacked by the Phyrexians and was corrupted with black mana. That was why Radiant ended up becoming so much of an evangelist against Urza. Yeah, that's what he. So he saves the. Well, he doesn't save the plane. He ends up destroying the realm and uses its energy to power the Thrawn Power Stones for the Weatherlight. So I forgot that the plane of Sarah's plane was corrupted with Phyrexian mana. Purify, destroy all artifacts and enchantments for 5 mana. Our mother, the sky was her hair, the sun her face. She danced on the grass and in the hills. Pygmy Pyrosaur, 2 mana 1/1. It cannot block, but it has fire breathing. Do not judge a lizard by its size. It's a get-to proverb. Pyromancy, for 4 mana. Pay 3, discard a card at random to deal damage to target creature or player equal to the total casting cost of the discarded card. Who harnesses fire controls the world. When it shows a get-to wizard roasting a Viashino. Excuse me. Quicksilver Amulet. 4 mana artifact. You can pay 4 and tap it. Choose a creature card in your hand and put it directly into play. Now, this does not count as a creature spell, so once the amulet's out on the battlefield, your opponent cannot counterspell the creature coming out with the amulet because it's not a spell at this point. Wonderful. You got a lion on your first try. Now put it back. Everybody wanted this card because everybody wanted to cheat out their creatures. Their biggest mana cost creatures for just 4 mana. I remember it took me a while to get this card, but once I had it, I loved it. Rack and Rune. Destroy 2 target artifacts. My people are bound by master centuries dead. Each artifact we destroy is another link broken in that chain. Barbtail, the Viashino Heretic. Radiant, the Archangel. 5 mana, 3/3 flying. She has vigilance, and she gets +1/+1 for each other creature with flying in play. Her Radiance Dragoons. For 4 mana, it's a 2/5 with Echo. When they enter the battlefield, gain 5 life. Radiance Judgment. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. This reminds me of the scene from Indiana Jones when they open the Ark of the Covenant. And it has cycling, so if your opponent doesn't have any creature power 4 or greater, you can just discard it and draw a card. Rancor. I mentioned in the last stream for Urza Saga that this was the most powerful reoccurring creature enchantment. Enchantment creature gets power +2 and trample. When Rancor goes to the graveyard, it returns to its owner's hand. Hatred outlives the hateful. And it's showing Multani. I forget who he's mad against. Rank and File. 4 mana 3/3 zombies. When they enter the battlefield, all green creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Left, right, left, right. Okay, left, 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 left. It shows all kinds of dead things. Undead army. Raven Familiar. 3 mana 1/2 bird with flying and echo. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Hey, Commander Caligo. It's been a while. Nice to see you. I took a break from Smash and I took a break from gaming, from streaming any games for a while. Work got so busy that I just needed the extra time to cool down. And I had some other games that I wanted to play. I was just getting backed up on them, but Smash will return soon. I'll be itching to play you guys all again. So it will return. I think next month in July is when we'll bring it back up. I'll do like a 4th of July Smash stream to open things up for everybody and get back in the this regular gaming schedule as I had before. Rebuild for 3 mana, return all artifacts to their owner's hands, and it cycles for 2. Repopulate for 2 mana, shuffle all creature cards from target player's graveyard into that player's library. These are ferrets, and this also has cycling. Ring of Gix for 3 mana. It has Echo. Pay 1, tap it, tap target artifact, creature, or land. Not every cage is made of bars. Rivalry. During each player's upkeep, if that player controls more lands than any other, Rivalry deals 2 damage to him or her. The Goblins revered it. The Viashino defended it. Only Urza understood it. And that's talking about the Thrawn Mana Rig and Sheev. Scrap Heap. Whenever an artifact or enchantment is put into the graveyard from play, gain 1 life. Junk Heaps have rats, but Scrap Heaps have goblins. Second Chance. I forgot about this card. During your upkeep, if you have 5 life or less, sacrifice Second Chance and you get an extra turn. The greatest gift is the opportunity to right one's wrongs. This is, now when Urza had originally went to fight Phyrexia, he got his ass handed to them. And they pretty much almost made him mad, which eventually they did. He does end up becoming insane. But that'll happen much later in the story. So he's able to recollect himself, and this inspires him to run the academy. This is where he finds the Thrawn Tome, and he starts to build the legacy weapon, and he knows that that's what he needs with Karn to defeat the Phyrexians. Shivan Phoenix, 6 mana, 3/4 flying. When it dies, return it to its owner's hand. To strike down the Phoenix is to slash at the flame. Costing 6 mana, though, is a lot for today's standards. Sick and Tired, 3 mana, 2 target creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Both these guys are throwing up. The Phyrexian's only interest in organic life is discerning its weakness. Alright, see ya, Calico. Thanks for saying hello. Silk Net. Target creature gets +1/+1 and can block creatures with flying until end of turn. Sometimes it's possible to pull a meal out of thin air. Simian Grunts. 3/4 with Echo and Flash. These monkeys mean business. The artwork is amazing. I love these cards. Are probably my favorite apes in Magic. I just like the artwork as a whole. But the Phyrexian Broodlings I like better. Sleeper's Guile. Enchanted creature cannot be blocked except by artifact and black creatures. Sleeper's Guile is put into a graveyard from play. Return it to its owner's hand. Slow Motion. During the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, that player pays 2 or sacrifices that creature. When Slow Motion is put into the graveyard, return it to its owner's hand. The artwork, it shows one of Jahora's friends get sucked into a time portal. Sluggishness. Enchanted creature cannot block. When Sluggishness goes to your graveyard, it also returns to your hand. Vark decided to lie down and think of a good excuse to quit working. Snap. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Untap up to 2 lands. Good riddance. I guess this goblin's being unsummoned. Spawning Pool. The black animated land that becomes a 1/1 creature with regeneration. I think it becomes a skeleton. Yep. Subversion for 5 mana. During your upkeep, Each of your opponents lose 1 life, and you gain 1 life for each life they lost in this way. Obviously much better in a group game. Carib's corrupt dominion swelled like a blister on Teleria's skin. Sustainer of the Realm. 4 mana for a 2/3 flying angel. When she blocks, she gets +2 toughness until end of turn. The harder you push, the stronger we become. Radiant to Urza. SWAT. For 3, destroy target creature power 2 or less, and it has cycling. This Phyrexian Broodling crushed this giant bug. Tethered Scourge. 3 mana for a 2/2 flying. When Tethered Scourge becomes the target of her spell or ability, lose 1 life. It bites the hand that leads it. I don't know why you would use this card. I think it should be 2 mana for a 2/2 flying if it has this ability. The 3 mana 2/2 flying is basic as it gets. And this is just a drawback for... And I don't know why it's an uncommon, to put it that way. Probably the worst uncommon that I've seen. And it's sad because I love the Scourges, but I would never use this card. I can't think of a way to use it effectively. It's just bad, bad, bad. Thornwood Fairies. 3 mana, 1/1 flying. It has the pinging ability where you tap it to deal 1 damage to any target. Guarding the ship is the Thornwind's first concern. Getting along with the local ranks, 4th or 5th at best. Thrawn Lens. All permanents are colorless, so this makes all protection from colors mute. Every device in the rig is evidence of Thrawn enlightenment. All mana was the same to them, whether from rock, water, growth, or decay. Can you imagine such unity of vision? Written in Urza's journal. Thrawn War Machine. 4 mana for a 4/5 Echo. It has to attack every turn if able. Thrawn Weaponry. It has Echo. During your upkeep, you may choose not to untap it. All creatures get +2/+2 as long as Thrawn Weaponry remains tapped. I don't like that it's all creatures. It should only, especially since it has Echo, it should only be your creatures. Another bad card in my opinion, and this one's a rare. I would hate to have opened this. Thankfully, I never did. Ticking Gnomes. 3 mana, 3/3 with Echo. You can sacrifice them at any time to deal 1 damage to any target. Ticking Time Bomb Gnomes. Tinker. A very powerful blue card because when you play Tinker, sacrifice an artifact. You search your library for any artifact and put it directly onto the battlefield. I wonder how it feels to be bored. Johora the Artificer. Here she has her toolbox, and she's tinkering, making some new artifact. What I did with this card was I would sacrifice one of my mana-making cards, like my Sky Diamond, and I would search for like Darksteel Colossus, 11/11 with Trample and Indestructible, and I would get that out on the 3rd turn, and most of the time that was GG there. Tinker is banned in Commander and Legacy and Oathbreaker because of that reason and many others. Tragic Poet. For 1 white, tapper, sacrificer, return target enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. I would weep, but my tears have been stolen. I would shout, but my voice has been taken. Thus I write. Treacherous Link. 2 mana enchant creature. Redirect to its controller all damage dealt to enchanted creature. So that means the creature itself will never take damage. The controller of that creature will always take the damage instead. You cannot possibly know the toll your alliances will exact from you. Baron saying this to Urza. I love the artwork because it shows a giant snake in Mortal Kombat with this crocodile. The card you can use offensively. You can put it on one of your opponent's weak creatures, and if they block, they're going to take the full damage from whatever they're blocking. If you have a burn spell, you can cast Fireball on a creature, and it will also redirect it to the opponent. You can put it on one of your creatures. If you absolutely have a creature that you want to save that does not want to die, and you have the life to safely take from every time that creature takes damage, you put Treacherous Link on one of your own creatures. Definitely an interesting enchantment. Treefolk Mystic, 4 mana, 2/4 Treefolk. Whenever a creature becomes blocked or blocks the Treefolk, destroy all enchantments that are on that creature. Urza's wards fell from him like autumn leaves as he entered the Dreaming Grove. He woke imprisoned in living wood. Treetop Village, my favorite of the animated lands. This is where the simian grunts live. And the Treetop Village is the green animated land that becomes a 3/3 ape with trample for only 2 mana until end of turn. Unearth for 1 black. Choose a creature card in your graveyard with casting cost 3 or less and put it directly into play. It also has cycling. Urza's Blueprints. It has Echo, but it costs 6 mana. That's a lot. And you tap it to draw a card. From concept to paper to reality. This shows the Weatherlight, and you can see its parts are being assembled. The keel of the Weatherlight, or the hull, I should say, is made from the Weather Seed, which it was a gift from Multani, and it's pretty much the living ship. It's a living embodiment of the Yavimaya forest, and it grows. So the even if it's not part of the actual forest anymore, the Weatherlight ship continues to grow. When the Weatherlight takes damage, it can regenerate itself. Viashino Bay, 4 mana for a 4/3. When Viashino Bay attacks, all creatures you control attack if able. When the Bay runs, matches stride. Pretty much it's the leader of the Viashino, the lizard people. Viashino Cutthroat, 4 mana, 5/3 with haste. However, at the end of the turn, you have to return it to your hand. You guys go on ahead. I'll catch up with you. Vark, the Goblin Scout, his last words. So you can see he's sleeping behind this rock, and the Cutthroat found him, and he's most likely going to get murdered by the Cutthroat here. Viashino Heretic. My first red card I ever was given to me. 3 mana, 1/3. Pay 2 and tap it. Destroy target artifact. Viashino Heretic deals to that artifact's controller damage equal to the casting cost of the destroyed artifact. The past is buried for good reason. Viashino Sand Scout, a weaker version of the Cutthroat. He only costs 2. He's a 2/1 with haste. He has to go back at the end of your turn. Vigilant Drake, 5 mana, 3/3 Drake with flying. Pay 3 to untap it. Awake and a wing in the blink of an eye. Walking Sponge, 2 mana, 1/1 Sponge. SpongeBob. Tap it, target creature loses flying, first strike, or trample until end of turn. Not only does it catch fish, it cleans them too. Now this sponge is electrical because you can see him fry these fish here as it's walking by them. Weatherseed Elf, 1/1 Elf for 1 green. Tap it, target creature gains Forest Walk until end of turn. My grandmother once told me the future of our world was inside the Weatherseed. When I touched it, I knew she was right. Weatherseed Fairies, 3 mana, 2/1 flying, protection from red. 2 days after the forge was completed, the fairies were immune to its flames. At this point, prior fairies were green in Magic, but at this point, they're going to become dominantly blue. This was a good card against red because of its protection from red. These can block dragons all day long. Weatherseed Treefolk, 5 mana for a 5/3 trample, possibly the best creature in this set. When Weatherseed Treefolk dies, return it to your owner's hand. My brother, one of my younger brothers, when he was a kid, and he shows up in the chat periodically, Jameson, he opened this card in his Urza's Legacy pack, and one of my neighbors at the time, or one of the neighborhood kids, ended up trading him crappy Marchon. Even though I like Marchon as a card, it's not as good as Weatherseed Treefolk, but I ended up having to trade it back so my brother would regain the card. But then my brother gave all his cards away, and then I still have this exact copy of the Weatherseed Tree Folk. There's Jameson. I had summoned him. I'm pretty sure you got it from a pack. I don't remember Weatherseed Tree Folk being part of a starter deck. The only starter decks I actually remember from Urza's Legacy was the one that Kevin got with the Molten Hydra and the Phyrexian Plague Lord. I remember I had gotten the black-white one with Flesh Reaver, but I don't remember Weatherseed Tree Folk being part of one. You joined at the right time, Jameson. But we are almost over because we're at the W's. Urza's Legacy definitely was a small set. It wasn't as big as Urza's Saga. Wheel of Torture, 3-mana artifact. During each of your opponent's upkeeps, Wheel of Torture deals 1 damage to that player for each card less than 3 in their hand. I'd like to buy a Bowel. It's making fun of Wheel of Fortune. This poor elf is on the Wheel of Torture. Wing Snare, 3 mana, destroy target creature with flying. Argoth's Doom rained from a clear sky. Yavimaya will not share the same fate. Molteni the Marrow Sorcerer. Last page. Yavimaya Granger, 3 mana, 2/2 elf with Echo. When they enter the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land and put it into play tapped. Shuffle your library afterwards. Even if you don't pay the Echo cost, you still got the extra land drop out of it. Yavimaya Scion, 5 mana, 4/4, protect from artifacts. Each time the saw blade bit, the tree spat it out. You can see these two lumberjacks trying to saw this tree, but he's got a little smile on his face because he's rejecting the saw blade. And the two lumberjacks don't really know what's going on. Yep, Jameson said you only paid their Echo like half the time, usually just needed the land. Oh, I forgot about Yavimaya Worm. 6 mana, 6/4 trample. When the gorilla playfully grabbed the worm's tail, the worm double backed and playfully ate the gorilla's head. I remember big creatures were popular among my friends. They wanted the biggest creatures as long as they weren't like absolutely horrible. 6 mana, 6/4 trample is pretty good. The 4 toughness makes it weaker in combat, but the artwork is really cool. I don't think any other worm kind of looks like this. And like I said, green was definitely the most popular color among my friends, and it was the easiest to learn. And I think that's why a lot of it had to do with that. I think that is the last card in the set, though. The art on it is great because this is the poor gorilla that's going to get eaten on. Yeah, that is the last card in the set, unfortunately. Was a small set, as I had mentioned, only 143 cards in it. I think Phyrexian Broodlings ended up being my favorite one. But Molten Hydra was a close one. Fog of Gnats was a close one. Phyrexian Plague Lord's close up there. There they are. Phyrexian Broodlings. I thought the Phyrexians were a pretty cool antagonist for Magic. And the fact that they lasted so long and will last a long time in Magic's future says a lot about them. And the conflict as they go for world and their endgame multiversal domination. Now, will Urza and his team be able to successfully fend off their next invasion? We'll find out in the next set, Urza's Destiny. Now, in The first two, Saga and Legacy, Urza was piecing together artifacts. But in the next set, Destiny, he will be doing a more hands on biological experiment because now he wants to breed. Now that he has the artifice and the mines, now he needs to build an army to be able to fend off the Phyrexian threat. Um, so this will end Urza's legacy. Next week, we will go over Urza's destiny. So if you have any other cards that you liked, or any memories or strategies of cards from the Urza's Legacy set, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. As I said, me and my friends, my brothers, started playing when the Urza's Legacy set was brand new. So as from this point forward, I was fully invested in the game, and I was around for every expansion's release from this one going forward. Till next time, I'll see you guys next week for more Magic the Conversation. Take care and have a good night.